they're making money. I mean, you know, they're paying out $145 billion in bonuses this year, up 18% versus last year, all while these stock prices are going down, dividends are getting slashed. Shouldn't they pony up some money?
Look, I think everybody that received TARP should pay it back to the Treasury. Absolutely. That should be done yesterday. That should be done today. That should be done as soon as possible. But this tax that they're talking about is not about recouping TARP funds. It's rhetorical only. This is simply a new tax on the top 50 banks in America. The fact that some of those 50 received TARP funds is accidental, and the fact that others that receive TARP funds, like Government Motors, like AIG, like some of these other companies, aren't going to have to pay this bank tax. So this bank tax has absolutely nothing to do with TARP.
Ryan, I don't know the answer to this, and please enlighten me here. When we reach $90 billion, which is the kind of the earmark for this tax, does that tax go away? Does it become a fee that was in the past, or is that going to go on in perpetuity so they can use that as a revenue generator?
Look, one of the old axioms in Washington is that once you have a spending program, it never goes away. There's also another axiom that we ought to add to that, which is once you put a, quote, temporary tax increase in place, that never goes away. There are surtaxes that Congress recently renews every year, 2 years, 3 years, whenever they actually need to, that just keep going on forever. It's kind of like, think of it like a toll road. If you live anywhere near a toll road and the toll was originally put in to pay for the construction of the road, chances are the toll's there years and decades after the road's already been paid for. It's like that with any other kind of tax. There's no way that Congress is going to forego this revenue once they're used to receiving it.
You want to know something? That is a great analogy and a perfect analogy. I'm going to have to leave it there. Ryan Ellis, Tax Policy Director for Americans for Tax Reform. All right, next, as Ronald Reagan famously said, the states formed the federal government and not the other way around. But the federal government has forgotten that. Next, Judge Napolitano on the federal government and its rights and the states' rights. We'll come right back. At the FoxNation.com. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano has been looking at the Constitution and freedom. In his 5-part series, the judge has broken down and explained the Constitution as the foundation of American government. Here he looks at the destruction of sovereignty of the states by the federal government. Check it out.
When the 13 colonies that had become states enacted the Constitution and voluntarily agreed to form the new government, they gave away some of their sovereignty. The right to coin money, the right to raise a military, the right to run a post office, the right to engage in foreign relations with other countries, the right to operate a national court system. All of this went to the feds. But the states retained for themselves what lawyers and judges call the police power. The police power does not refer to police as in cops and sheriffs. It refers to the right and power of the states to legislate for the health, safety, welfare, and morality of the people in the states. That is the core of the power retained by the states under the Constitution. As other territories joined the Union, from Florida to Louisiana, from Maine to Texas, from California to Alaska, they each gave to the feds the powers that they formerly had that were federal in nature, and they all retained for themselves the powers that were governmental in nature, the police power. The states also retained a veto of sorts over the growing federal government, since the U.S. Senate, which is half of the Congress, consisted not of senators popularly elected as they are today, but of senators chosen by the state legislatures. The senators were, in reality, delegates from the states to the central government. When the Congress attempted to seize some of the states' police power, state regulation of health, safety, welfare, and morality, if the senators wanted to keep their jobs, they voted against such seizures. This was the genius of the federal system. The federal government regulated within its limited area. The states regulated within their limited area. The senators and fidelity to the Constitution kept the feds in check. All this changed after the Civil War. The folks who ran the government after Lincoln's death demanded surrender of power from the returning southern states. The federal government was taken over by big government progressives, and slowly but surely, power began to flow from each state to Washington, D.C. Progressives took over many state governments. The Constitution was amended in good ways to prohibit slavery, to compel equal protection, and to permit women to vote, and in bad ways to permit a federal income tax, to elect senators by popular vote, and to prohibit the sale of alcohol. So the states no longer had a check on federal power. The feds could now take money directly from those who worked the hardest. And the feds, who for 150 years had left individuals alone, began to tell folks what to eat, what to drink, how many hours to work, and what they should earn, even though the power to do all this was retained by the Constitution for the states. One of the beauties of our federal system was the difference between the states. If you didn't like the taxes in Massachusetts, you could move to New Hampshire. If you objected to all the pervasive government in New Jersey, you could move to Pennsylvania. As President Reagan once put it, you could vote with your feet. This is no longer true. The Congress has so usurped power from the states via legislation and outright bribery that you can hardly tell the difference from one state to another. Will we ever return to the freedom and the choices we once enjoyed?
Here with more on the loss of individual freedom at the hands of Congress, Fox News senior judicial analyst and good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, got to start off with how did we come so far? How did we sway so far away from the original founding fathers' blueprint to where we are right now?
Because when the original Congress was elected, Eric, the people that went to the government were lovers of freedom, and they had just experienced a crushing, oppressive government at the hands of Great Britain. They didn't want to ever produce a government like that. Over the years, the halls of Congress didn't draw to it people who love freedom, but rather people who love power. And in all three branches of the government, the president, the Congress, and the courts, the mindset began to develop. How can we have more power to control more human activity? We'll take it from individuals, and we'll take it from the states. That's what we're left with now. I mean, you just had a wonderful conversation about this tax that President Obama wants to impose on the banks. There's no authority for that in the Constitution. And the serious problem is the government doesn't care about the Constitution because few people are concerned about it as they should be.
Hey, Judge, there was a little bit of news out today, the Amish and other religious groups claiming that they're conscientiously objecting to having to buy health care. Constitutional or not?
It is constitutional for the government to grant exemptions from certain behavior on the basis of religious beliefs. For example, when we had a draft, if you were a true conscientious objector because your religion taught you that you couldn't kill under any circumstances, you were exempt from the draft. There was a time when you performed other government services, but it wasn't for the military. So the Amish will claim the same type of exemption. But this will open up the floodgate to a lot of exemptions, like you and I have constitutional objections to the government telling us that we must purchase something that we might not want or might not need.
Yeah, I was wondering, only religious? Is it that's the only grounds for being conscientiously objecting to something? I can't say my political views, or I'm a conservative and I don't want to add to the deficit and I don't like anything about it, so I shouldn't have to buy health care too?
When the Supreme Court of the United States looked at the conscientious objectors to the draft in a case called Welsh versus the United States, it said you don't have to belong to a particular religion. You don't even have to believe in God. You just have to hold that view of conscientious objection with the same degree of sincerity and fervor that you would as if it were a religious view. This breeds tremendous amounts of litigation as to who believes what and what is the source of their beliefs. We'd be far better if the government didn't tamper with our liberties and didn't make us look for these exemptions.
Judge, I'm getting taxed. I'm getting my income taxed. I'm getting just about everything that moves taxed. I have to have health insurance. I have to have car insurance. I'm even being told how much sugar and salt I can have now. Where does it end?
I don't know where it's going to end. I hope that through the types of things that Glenn Beck talks about 5 days a week, and you and I are privileged to talk about from time to time as well, that people will rise up and realize that the government is out of control. It's been out of control for a long time. This series that I did, a portion of which you were just kind and generous enough to run a clip from, demonstrates how slowly and gradually over the years government disregarded the confines of the Constitution and now doesn't even take it seriously. When people recognize that and throw the bums out who don't respect the Constitution, then we will have more control over our freedom, more choices, and can keep more of our own property.
All right, the wrapping us, Judge, real quickly. Everyone out there watching wants to know, I'm sure, where are you?